Hello, my name is Teresa and I'm from Gainesville, Georgia. I would like to welcome everyone to the Community Support Podcast. The purpose of this podcast is to raise money for a community center. If you like this content, please like, subscribe, and share. I'm going to start off my story by telling you when it all started, back in 1994. I was addicted to crack cocaine, and every time I smoked crack, I started hallucinating. And my drug addiction led me to writing worthless checks. I wrote over 300 worthless checks, and I forged some checks. The judge sentenced me to 6 months in a halfway house, and once I paid my restitutions and fines, he wiped everything clean off my record. He put me on the First Offenders Act. I remember when I was I was handcuffed and shackled to a halfway house in Quitman, Georgia, to a women's rehab, and I was surrounded by 16 women. After the 6 months, I felt like it wasn't long enough for me. I wasn't ready to go out there yet. So I stayed in there for about 4 or 5 more months. And even though I stopped doing the drugs, the hallucinations were still coming on strong. I hid this for about 30 years. When I got out of the halfway house, I remember coming home, and I got married, and I stayed married for about 20 years. And the thing about it is, I was up under a lot of stress. I knew my husband was cheating on me through the streets, but I didn't know who he was cheating with. I knew he wasn't hardly coming home. Hallucinations was getting stronger, and the only person I was talking to was my husband, about it. And he kept telling me, he kept pushing me to get help. And finally, in 2016, I called a place called Avita. And they said, even though you don't have no insurance, you can still come see me. We'll still help you. So I talked to counselors and everything, and I remember going inside Avita, and I was crying. I couldn't stop crying. And the first thing that, I told him, I said, I don't want you to think I'm crazy, but I keep hearing stuff, and I keep seeing things that ain't there. It started when I was doing drugs, but even though I stopped the drugs in 1996, it stayed with me. And I can tell you, Avita was the best thing that ever happened to me. I'm not a spokesperson for them, but I just want to tell you that, even though you don't have any insurance, that's one place you can go to in Gainesville that would help you with your prescriptions. My prescriptions were free. The counseling was free. Everything was free. In 2016, I was diagnosed with manic depressive psychiatric disorder and schizophrenia and anxiety. And they told me I've got a chemical imbalance in my brain. That's the reason why I hallucinate so much. And they got different categories of hallucinations, and they didn't know what to put me on. So she started me out with a medicine. I forgot what the medicine was called, but let me tell you the side effects. I was laughing, crying, and dancing at the same time. And that lasted for about 2 hours. And I remember my husband standing there, and he was watching all this. And then, thank goodness that, my heart rate slowed down, and I went to sleep. And when I woke up, I asked him, I said, did you notice anything was off? He said, well, I know you was laughing and crying and you was dancing, but I said, you didn't think nothing of it, you know. He said, no. He said, I thought you were just playing. And I said, you know, when have you know that I was crying and laughing and doing the funky chicken at the same time? I said, you ain't never known that about me. So I said, anytime you see something that ain't right, make sure you dial 911. So they started me off on different medicines to counteract that, because they said that I went manic of the first medicine, so they had to do something to do something opposite to keep me balanced. And that went on for, I was in and out of psychiatric hospitals for about a couple of years. And stress was bringing it on. And one thing I do notice about my body is, you know, in my mind, you know, it's just my mind race a lot. I pace the floor a lot, you know, when I'm under a lot of stress. And I remember the day that, you know, my husband sat across from me, and I said, I know you've been gone a lot. Whatever it is, you can tell me. You know, we've been married for 20 years. And he said, Teresa, I do have something to tell you. He said, I've been having an affair. I said, you know, I kind of knew that. And then he hit me with, Teresa, she said she's pregnant by me. And I felt like dying. I felt like, you know, somebody just stabbed me in my heart. I said, whatever it is, we'll work through it. And I remember after that, him leaving. And my hallucinations came back stronger and stronger. And to the point to where, you know, when he left the last time, my hallucinations was in my ear telling me, Teresa, you know, he don't want you no more. You know, just kill yourself. You just, you know, don't nobody want you. Ain't nobody gonna miss you. You know, all this was going through my head. He done moved on. He happy, you know. You ain't got no life, you know. You just basically die. And I put all my pills on the bed, psychiatric pills on the bed. And I remember taking a handful. I took a handful of pills, and my body started shutting down. I was laying on the bed. When I reached up to take another handful of pills, my hand got stuck. And mentally I was thinking, you know, I got to go to the bathroom and throw this up. You know, God, I was talking to God all this time, you know, God, please don't let me die. I didn't mean to do this. My heart was racing. And my husband came home and he said, Teresa, I don't know what you done. I could hear him, but faintly. He called 911. And my hand was stuck and I couldn't move, and I got to where I couldn't see. And my mouth was open. The paramedics came in, and I remember them taking me out on a stretcher. And all that time, you know, me consciously, I was talking to God and saying, God, please don't let me die like this. I don't want to die like this. You know, I promise you this is, you know, I'm going to do better. When I got to the psychiatric hospital, went to the hospital, and then I went to the psychiatric hospital and stayed for about a couple of weeks. And then I came back. And, you know, it just seems like the same thing was happening over again. He was leaving, and, you know, he was, wasn't coming home. And I remember getting down on my knees, begging God, God, you know what? Tell me what to do. I was on my knees. I said, you know, I don't know what to do. I'm lost. And I remember God telling me, Teresa, stand up. I stood up on my feet. God told me, this is what I want you to do. do absolutely nothing. Don't do anything. Don't respond. Don't keep texting them. Don't keep calling them. Don't do nothing. He said, we got work to do. I want you to help other people. After then, I felt like God, that was my calling. He wanted me to start a community center to help other people in the same predicament I was in, to help them overcome stuff. So that's when I started doing my homework about a community center. How do I, open up a community center? I did all my paperwork, 501c, everything, the bylaws. And the only thing I'm doing right now is trying to get up funds. So that's the reason why I got this podcast going. Because I want to tell everyone, no matter what you done been through, don't let that deter you from going forward. And I remember my husband said, Teresa, I don't want to come home and walk in a predicament and you still in the same mindset. He said, I said, D, one thing I do remember, I couldn't see. I said, I thought my eyes was closed. He said, your eyes was open, but they was rolled in the back of your head. I didn't know that. With that being said, the community center is going to be called H.L. Banks Community Center, and we're going to have all kind of recreational activities. It's going to be a resource center also for mental illness, people with disabilities. It's going to have a veteran office in there, also a immigration office. Even though I don't have a facility at the moment, I will still be hosting community center activities, such as the Halloween Bash, October the 28th, 2023. From 3 to 6, kids will be free. All free food, prizes, gift cards be given away. Once again, my name is Teresa King. Thank you for checking out my community support podcast. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe.